Hello, welcome to the Omnivorous Bookworm. My name is Lauren, and today is the end of month August 2021 wrap up. So this last August, I had quite a light reading month. I was moving, and so for the month of August, I just read whatever I felt like and didn't worry about meeting any goals or, trying to read certain books. I just read things that looked good to me that I already had on my TBR or that I had gotten from Kindle Unlimited. And yeah, so it was really light. It was mostly mystery, a lot of Agatha Christie. So, but very, very light. So I only read 6 books this month. But the average star rating I had was a 4.25. So I don't know. I feel like maybe I should be doing that more of just reading things that I enjoy. And yeah, because obviously it was successful. Um, I got 2 books that were 3.5 stars. That was the lowest rating I had. One book was 4 stars, 2 books were 4.5 stars, and 1 book was 5 stars. So I didn't have any favorites, which I give 6 stars, but I definitely enjoyed everything I liked. So I enjoyed everything I read. I enjoy everything I read. I read a total of 1,701 pages for an average page per book of 284. Average pages per day was only 55, but that's fine. That's good. Um, Average age of the book that I was reading was 46 years old. I think the Agatha Christie had a lot to do with that. So I read, my oldest book that I read was from 1926. I read another book from 1953, another book from 1957, one from 1992, one from 2009, and one from 2014, which was my newest book. So I was not reading any new releases or anything like that this month, which is fine too. So I read a total of 4 mysteries. They were all classic mysteries. 3 of them were Agatha Christie. Like half of the books I read this month were Agatha Christie, but that's good. I read 1 romance that was a contemporary. I read 1 historical fiction. As far as trying to read diversely, 3 out of the 6 books that I read were diverse authors. So basically anything I read that wasn't Agatha Christie was a diverse author. So that's good. As far as countries where the books take place, I like to keep that in mind. 3 of the books were set in the UK. 1 book was set in India/US. 1 book was set in just the US, and 1 book was set in Bangladesh. As far as where I got my books, 3 of them were audiobook, not Kindle Unlimited. 2 were ebooks that I purchased, and then 1 was a Kindle Unlimited ebook only. Okay, so getting into the actual books, my first 3.5 star book is A Bollywood Affair by Sonali Dev, and this is a contemporary romance. I really liked the setup of the book, the conception. So it's set up, we have this, it starts off like back in time, and we have this young girl and this young boy, and the young girl is Milli, and she is, I believe, she's 4. She's really, really young. She's a young child, and she's having this marriage ceremony, this arranged marriage ceremony with this other boy from another family. And then his brother is sort of comforting her because she's crying a lot. And then the idea would be that, they are combining these families in this arranged marriage. And then years later, the husband is supposed to come back and then they're going to live together. But they're just living these like lives. And then she gets into academia, and she gets a visa to come to the US, to Michigan, to study and work on her graduate studies. And the brother of the guy that she's married to is coming to the US to make her sign a paper for legal purposes. So anyway, I really liked the setup. I thought it was really interesting. It was really unique. I like that they showed Millie, at least in the beginning, I felt like more so as, even though she came from this tiny little like Indian countryside, very old fashioned in their beliefs town, you know, she's a strong person. She has her own ideas, she has her own beliefs. She she believes in her sort of the how she's been raised and those traditional ideas, but she's sort of changing, and but she's coming into her own. So she's deciding which of those things that she thinks are good and helpful and she wants to carry with her, and which things maybe are not for her. And also the man that's pursuing her, or well, he's coming to find her. He is extremely wealthy. He's a Bollywood producer or director, I believe, and he's from an extremely affluent, you know, I believe he's from Mumbai. So it also helps to show like different parts of India and the different, I mean, obviously India is so diverse, so you're not going to show all the different parts, but it's nice to not just say like, oh, all the characters are going to be from small town, southern India, which is where she's from. But not all the characters are going to be, you know, I always like when books show sort of a variety of people from different classes or different regions. I always find that more interesting. And how uh, like at one point her friend is getting married, and her friend is Punjabi and they're from the north of India, and she's marrying a guy who's from the south of India, and basically they think his family's kind of backwards, or not backwards, but just old fashioned. And it's just kind of funny to see that, and there's some play with that that's really interesting. For me, I feel like where the book sort of it, I really enjoyed like the first 30-40%, and then after that it just felt like the plot kept going and things were happening, but it didn't feel like it was really pushing the story itself forward. It was sort of adding extra elements that didn't really seem necessary to me. Um, and I can put up with some of that. There's also some miscommunication that I found a little bit frustrating, but I think other people would find even more frustrating. So just to give you a heads up that that is in there, there's reasons for why there's miscommunication. But if that's something that really irritates you, just to let you know. Um, the main thing that kind of pushed it down for me was I was just getting frustrated with Millie. I just felt like she started off as more of a stronger character, but she was one of those characters that she keeps hurting herself, she keeps falling down, and it's like, okay, I can deal with a little bit of that, but it's just constant. You're like, this girl needs some help. Like, what is happening? Kind of this is like reminded me sort of in the Mysteries of Adolfo that she keeps fainting. Well, Millie keeps falling. She keeps like constantly falling and hurting herself, which it just gets kind of annoying. The first time was okay. It was after that, it was just kind of, oh, okay, Millie, stand up. Don't fall over. And she just was this a little bit irritating to me sometimes, like as the book continued on. Not to the point where it got in my enjoyment of the book too much. Um, but yeah, it was just sort of maybe that last chunk was just a little bit too long, and it just felt like this they added these extra scenes that I don't know. I feel like the whole thing with Samir's biological mom in the story didn't necessarily need to be there, at least in this book, because it just added too many things, in my opinion. That's my opinion. But I enjoyed it, and I gave it 3.5 stars. Um, my second 3.5 star book is 450 from Paddington. This is number 7 of Miss Marple by Agatha Christie. This one also has a really interesting premise. So this woman, Elspeth, is taking the train, and as she's taking the train, there's another train coming the opposite direction, and just for like a split second, she sees this man with his hands around a woman's neck, and the woman is obviously uh, like dead, dying, and but there's no reports of a body. Nothing has turned up, and so of course Miss Marple has to go and investigate. Um, so I found it really interesting, like the whole premise of it. I enjoyed. It was just a really enjoyable book. I listened to it while I was cleaning our new house, and like I listened to the whole book like while I was just cleaning and mopping and everything. So it was a really quick read. It was really enjoyable. Um, but it's just one of those books that it's fun to read. It was nice to like while away your it's cleaning on a like if you have to clean, and but it doesn't really stick with you. And I think part of the issue is that the premise is so strong, and a lot of books do this where like the premise is really super interesting, really strong, and then the way that it wraps up though, or sort of as the book goes along, it can't stand up to this really strong premise that the book started off with. And I feel like that's sort of what happened with this book. Obviously, since Agatha Christie, I can't get into like too many details of like things that are happening. But honestly, a lot of it hasn't stuck with me, like a lot of the details. Now, granted, I have been reading a lot of Agatha Christie in September too. So sometimes when you read a lot of Agatha Christie, like some plot points and characters can sort of get like mixed up in my head. But yeah, I would say it was a fun book, an enjoyable book. It was a fun read. The ending was like the actual sort of reveal was kind of good. It was like very classic Miss Marple, I feel like. It's like the only Miss Marple could do that. Nobody else can get away with that. Um, but yeah, the premise, I love the premise. I love sort of the puzzle aspect of it, trying to figure out, okay, who is taking this train and when, and figuring out like the house. Miss Marple also employs this woman. It's kind of funny because it was in two different Agatha Christie books that I read very close together, where she talks about women who are very intelligent, very like like the woman in this book, I believe. See, I'm getting it confused. I'm not even sure if it, but I'm pretty sure it was this book, that she was going to get an academic career, and then she found out she could make more money cleaning houses, and she's very good at it, and she's one of those people who can charge a high amount, and she like does a lot of things to get a family like through a certain like period of time, like if somebody's sick or something like that. So I found that very interesting that Agatha Christie makes a point, a very specific point of being like, people dismiss cleaning people or housekeepers, and actually this job is really involved and really difficult. It's just and it can be really valuable. So I found that interesting as well. For the 4-star books, I have A Pocketful of Rye. This is number 8 in Miss Marple by Agatha Christie. Um, this is one of those nursery rhyme books that Agatha Christie loves so much, where it's like 4 and 20 blackbirds baked in a pie. When the pie was open, the birds began to sing. Um, there's like another verse that I didn't know. I had never heard. I don't know if it's a British thing or an older thing. I'm not sure. Sometimes with Agatha Christie, like what is it, where that line is. But there's like another phrase, I guess, where like the maid has a clothespin on her nose. So anyway, we get 3 dead bodies in this one. The first one we have is Rex Fortescue, who's like a really rich, not very popular, or not very nice, I guess, guy that he is found dead and poisoned. And then his young wife, who's the main suspect, is also found dead. Um, and then the housekeeper, or not the housekeeper, like a servant in the house is also found dead. So Miss Marple comes in and she figures it all out. This is definitely one of those Agatha Christie books that you have to, uh, like, you have to be able to suspend your disbelief to be able to enjoy this story. If you can't do that, you're not going to be able to enjoy the story, because there are a lot of plot points that are just very like you just have to make that jump and be like, that's what happened. That is what happened. Cannot decide if that is like realistically what happened or not. They always have these characters that end up coming together from these like very far-fetched reasons of how they're coming together. But I enjoy it, and I feel like that's can be some of the fun parts of Agatha Christie. Okay, moving into my 4.5-star books, I have Blanche on the Lamb. It's #1 in the Blanche White series, and it's by Barbara Neely. This was a cozy mystery. It was written, published in like 1992, so I put it as a classic. It was a really interesting story. I had never heard of this cozy mystery series before. I don't know if it wasn't, if I just wasn't aware, like it was just never something I came across, or if it wasn't popular at that time. I really don't know. Let me know if you know more than I do about this series. I came across it on Kindle Unlimited. I really, really enjoyed it. I really liked it. We have Blanche White. She's like kind of plus size. Um, she's she works cleaning houses, and she does it because she likes to be. She doesn't want to have just like a boss telling her, you have to do this, you have to do that. And obviously she's working in people's homes, they tell her what to do, but she also does a lot of things sometimes when she's in their homes, like to be subversive. Like she'll like take a bath in their bathtub, or like it's like a subconscious thing of being like, you're not really bossing me around. And really they're not, because she's really strong, she knows herself, but she also is smart. Like she knows not when to argue with people, but since we're the reader and we get into her brain, she's just really, really funny. um, it's interesting because the beginning of the book, it feels much more modern. Like if you just read the beginning, the I don't even want to talk about how the book starts, because I really enjoyed not knowing that, and it's really surprising how it sort of happens. But so I won't give any of that away, so that I don't want to ruin that part for anybody else either. But needless to say, Blanche on the Lamb, she's kind of on the run from the police. But the beginning, it just really sucks you in. It's a really great opening. I loved the opening. And she ends up working for this family on vacation. She is from North Carolina, and she has moved to New York. And in the 90s, if you're not like aware, like New York became extremely dangerous. There was a lot of crime in the 90s. It's like New York City nowadays, it's much, much better, but at that time it was very high crime. And so she feels like she's raising her sister's two children. Their sister died, and so she feels that she needs to bring them back to North Carolina, where her mother lives, because just for safety. But the problem is that they're an African American family, and when you're in the like main part of the story, it feels much more dated. Like it doesn't feel like it's from the 90s. It could have been. It feels like you're in the 1950s or 1960s, which I'm sure is like conscious on the part of the authors. They're showing you like these places have not changed. Like it is really, really bad. People are not being paid properly for their work. Like African Americans are not, and they're just very dismissive. They just treat her like she doesn't know anything, and she's extremely educated. I don't know if she has like a formal education, but she's read a lot. She's very smart. She knows a lot of things. She's researched a lot of African history, African American history. She is no dummy for sure. And yet she knows how to kind of act dumb sometimes, because she knows that that's what they want from her, and she doesn't want to have problems, especially when she's trying to stay under the radar of the police and she's in this small town in North Carolina. Like you definitely do like worry for her throughout the book. You're like, oh my gosh, I'm glad this is a cozy mystery. I kept thinking that. Um, And I really like that the author, so when Blanche is doing things that are, uh, I mean, all cozy mysteries, part of what pushes the story forward is the sleuth doing things that are high stakes to get us interested, but sometimes it can be kind of frustrating if you're like, oh my gosh, don't be stupid. But with Blanche, because of her personality and because of the reasons that the author gives us, I never felt that way. Like, I was totally Team Blanche the whole time. I just really enjoyed her. She's just one of those people that you're like, God, you would love to be friends with her. She's just very, she can be sarcastic, she can be what, but she's just so insightful. Like, she sees people and she can just figure out what makes them tick. And I really enjoyed that. And obviously, that comes from her line of work and, not always being able to, you know, show her true colors to like white people that she was around, because they wouldn't have wanted to to know that. Like, they wouldn't have appreciated her. And just for survival, like, that's how she's gonna survive. She needs to make money. She's able to do that. There's also a representation of a young man in the story. I forget what they say he has, but it's like a lighter form of Down syndrome. And he and Blanche have a really sweet connection in the story, and I really liked that. I liked, because she talks about that it's like the first time she's met a white man, and she didn't feel any guile. She didn't feel any type of, like, when he would say things, he just meant them, and he was just very sincere and very sweet. And people also took, like, because Blanche doesn't really care if he has a disability, um, he just she just gets to know him for who he is without feeling like, oh, he's that, um, the boy who has, I forget I think they called it mosaic. I don't remember what they called it in the story. Um, but it was some type of mental retardation, or at least that's how his family took it. I'm not sure exactly what what the details were in the story, but because that's not really important to his character. The main thing is that he's just a really good person. And but it's sad because they have this connection, but because he's a white man from a powerful family in the South, Blanche can't let herself get close to him, and she knows that. She's started like, okay, I need to stop, getting having emotions for this guy, because I'm gonna get hurt and it's gonna come back on me. And I really appreciated how the author did that, and just whatever characters you see is just turns it on its head, um, which I really like when cozy mysteries can do that. And I feel like Barbara Neely really used the genre of the cozy mystery in a really great way, because you get to see, like, you have the plot, you have the puzzle, which is interesting. We know that everything's gonna work out okay in the end. Like, everybody's gonna find out, who the killer is and all that stuff. Um, but we also, um, she deals with more she deals with deeper issues and deeper subjects and things that I was, for a mainstream book at this time in the early 90s, like, we're still talking about this stuff, or they are in the US, as far as, the justice system and how unfair it is, and racial inequality, and in, the workplace, and people getting paid less, um, and how certain places are just not improving their attitudes and things like that. So I really enjoyed this book. I would say the only negatives that I would have is, if I tend to like the murder earlier on in the book, the murder kind of happens about halfway through. And there are things happening and there are interesting things, and I think the premise sort of helps to push those things that are happening. But yeah, I think it maybe could have been tightened up a little bit, and we could have had more things happening earlier on in the book. But I would say if you can get through like the first 40-50%, it does get more interesting, and it does start to move faster. Um, My next 4.5-star book is A Golden Age by um, Tahmima Tahmima Anam. Sorry. This takes place in Bangladesh in 1971, and when the story starts off, it's when Bangladesh was called East Pakistan after the when it was I can't think today. I don't have words, but it was when like the partition of India with Pakistan, and Pakistan used to be West Pakistan or Pakistan and East Pakistan. Um, and then Bangladesh, of course, gets their independence, and it's sort of about these days. I was reading online that a lot of people from Bangladesh um, felt like the book didn't give an accurate portrayal of this time, but I am not qualified to talk about that or to speak on that at all. So I'm just going to be talking about it from the story point of view. Um, Obviously, it's fictional. It's not. It's if you want a nonfiction, then I, there's other places you could turn to. Um, so it takes place in 1971. We have a widow, Rehana, and she has two children, Sohail and Maya. I I really enjoyed the book. Like there are some hard scenes, and obviously, like this is a war that's happening, so there's some hard things that are happening during the book. Um, just to give you a heads up for that. But I feel like the characterization was done pretty well. I appreciated that they're showing again like different levels of religiosity in Muslim families, and like Rehana is considered pretty religious, but because she prays every day, and but she doesn't cover her head, and then like one of the friends of the family starts becoming super religious, and how people react to that. And then you also have like at this time a lot of the younger people are very interested in communist ideals and trying to, you know, they've foisted off the British, and now they want to make a life for themselves. They want to make a future for themselves. They're becoming very political, and I really appreciated how the author showed that without it becoming preachy one way or the other. It was just kind of showing how these younger people were coming across different ideas and how strongly they were holding these ideas. And then she also shows that even people who don't want to become political, they have no interest in politics, at some point you have to decide, are you going to fight, or are you going, or not fight like necessarily with guns, but are you going to support the resistance, or are you going to support the people in power, and which side are you going to pick? And you have to. You don't get to be like Switzerland anymore, you know? So I really appreciated that. I think the book is really beautifully written without being overly written, which is always difficult. The descriptions are beautiful and concise without being too flowery. There's not too much purple prose. It's not over the top. It's not overly dramatic. It's just showing things, and it does show the price of war, and it shows that at the end, even if you win, there's this sense of like, was it worth it? Was it really worth it? Like, we lost so much, and so many people, and so many innocent people. And when she talks about like the boys that are fighting, a lot of them as guerrilla warriors, or uh, are her son's friends, and she talks about how young they are, and they're just babies. They don't know any different, and it's just it's very touching, and it's a good story. I will say, like, there are some things in the story where you're like how she got her money when she reveals it. To me, it was lacking something. Like, it could have worked, but I didn't quite believe everything how she said it. But it was some minor things, and overall, I really enjoyed this story. And my last book is a 5-star book, The Murder of Roger Ackroyd. This is number 6 in Poirot by Agatha Christie. This is a classic. I had never read it before, and I did not know the ending. I was surprised, I have to say. Maybe I'm dumb, I don't know. I was really surprised. I can imagine when this was written, it would have been extremely shocking for people. For modern readers or people who like mysteries, we've been exposed to so many different types of ways that a mystery can be told. But so in this story, Roger Ackroyd is murdered. Well, there's a woman is widow Farhas or something. I forget how to say her name. I don't know how to say her name. Um, she's killed. Oh no, she commits suicide, and then shortly thereafter, Roger Ackroyd is killed. And he's killed in this room, and I can't go into too many details because I don't want to give anything away or be spoilery. But it is really interesting. I was really surprised. I really liked it. Really, really liked it. And I know it's a classic. I think people have mixed feelings about it. I liked all of it. I liked the characterization. I liked Poirot. There's no Hastings in this one. Um, which maybe that's why I liked it too, because Hastings is not my favorite. Um, it, it took turns that I wasn't expecting, but they worked for me. Um, yeah, it was overall very, very, very enjoyable. A good book. I really liked it. It's pretty early on in the Christie canon, I believe. So it's you know she's at her prime as far as her writing goes, and it really shows. I enjoyed it. I really, really liked it. And it's definitely one of those classics that if you haven't read it by Christie, like, you definitely need to. That was one of the reasons I read it, because I kept seeing it pop up and people saying that how much they liked it and that it was such a classic, and I was like, I never read it. And I think partially I hadn't read it because the title was just not that intriguing to me. But yeah, I really, really liked it. So that's all I can say about that. I don't want to get into any spoilers. So that is for the month of August. It was a pretty light reading month, but overall I feel like successful, because I enjoyed most of the things that I read, and it's summertime, so it's good we're out there enjoying ourselves. Now we're back in school now that it's September, so like can't can't enjoy myself as much. Although I'm moved, so that's good. All right, so thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye bye.